So before I begin with the moving forward series for DC United, I'm going to quickly talk about the England versus USA game that happened today. And this is one of the few times that both of these teams meet in the international stage. And when that happens, it's a little bit awkward for me because I support both of those teams. And it's very rare that two teams that I support in the international stage or in the domestic stage face off each other. And I actually only watched the first 30 minutes of this game. And after that, I basically turned the TV and never watched the rest of the match. And you might think, why do I decide to turn off the TV after half an hour? I mean, this is a match that in some way I will be happy either way because one of these teams that I support is going to walk out victory. Yeah, that's not how exactly it kind of played out. And in many ways, I found a lot of disappointment and a lot of anger after what I watched in this match, mostly as a US fan perspective. But obviously, when I look at this match as in an England perspective, obviously I am happy that England won. I'm happy that they won 3-0 in this match. I believe Lingard, Wilson, and I forgot who was the goal scorer for England in that game, or the second goal scorer for England in this game. But I'm happy that they won, but at the same time I know what's going to happen when they turn into their mid-20s and into the prime, where the English media is going to once again hype these kind of wonder kid that they have, and basically they are going to just turn to shit once they go into the prime year. It's been a story of the England national team for the last 30 and 40 years. And it's hard to be an England fan, to be excited about these wonder kid, even though they're doing very well and potentially could have a bright future for this team, and certainly the future of England is very well. They're going to somehow stumble because of the pressure from the media. And in a US man's perspective, after watching this game, my word, this was arguably one of the worst performances I have seen the US men's national team play. And keep in mind, I didn't watch this whole game, but after what I saw from the first 30 minutes, it really reminds me of the US versus Trinidad and Tobago game. I mean, just first of all, what in the world was the tactics that Dave Sarachan sets out in this game? And by the way, how in the world does Dave Sarachan still currently the manager of this US men's national team? Why in the world have we not had a replacement for him? Well, not really a replacement, but have named a head coach for the US men's national team. What in the world are we waiting for? Like, it's been almost a year since we sacked Bruce Arena, and it's been almost a year, or even a year now, that Dave Sarachan is the interim manager, and he still is here. And it's clear that he is definitely not cut out for this job, and the tactics that he used, I just don't get. What exactly was he thinking in this game of just decide to sit back and hopefully they can basically play a long ball up front, and hopefully somebody basically get that long ball and score a goal, and also playing a two midfielder in a very stacked and very good English midfielder. I mean, what in the world was that kind of tactic? That kind of reminds me of what the Quakes used to always said, where they just keep bunkering down, keep putting long balls up front, hopefully someone will get it. And we know that most of the time when I see the Quakes does that, it does not work. So why in the world am I seeing the same thing with what Dave Sarachan decides to set up in this game? Secondly, our midfield was completely overrun. And it shouldn't be a surprise that our midfield is overrun, because we only had two midfielders there and they basically got completely destroyed. And the other thing that went wrong for this team is that we just couldn't hold possession. I mean, it just feels like every time when we have the possession, we couldn't even string some of the simplest pass. We just keep giving the ball away, keep punting it out of bounds, keep playing long ball that eventually ends end up to be out of bounds and get the possession back to England. And the defense, holy crap, it was absolutely hot garbage in this game. The goals that we conceded in this game, I mean, the first goal, in some way, fair play to Jesse Lingard. That was an amazing goal by them. But the second and third goal was just horrendous defending from us. The second goal, our back line just completely stood there as statue. And now I remember that I think it was Dele Alli that scored that second goal, and he basically just gone past the U.S. defense with just complete ease. And then the third goal, I mean, John Brooks, how in the world are you letting Callum Wilson beat you on a header like that? I mean, the back line was just a complete joke. The midfield was also a complete joke. Will Trapp should definitely never be the captain of this U.S. men's national team ever again, because he was I think he was the worst player on this team in this game. He was just keep giving the ball away, and he was keep letting those England players just run past him. He was just such a liability in this game. And overall, as a U.S. fan, after watching this, I am sort of freaked out about this. And I know some people will say that it's just one game and, it's one of those games where the team does not do well. Oh no, it's not just this game. I've seen this a couple of times. This is probably the worst kind of display, but I've seen equally worse display by this young U.S. men's national team, and I am freaking out. Because this is supposed to be our future. This is supposed to be the team that in the next couple of World Cup, they're going to be our main core of this team. And the way that when you look at this young core not gelling and not having that chemistry, and the fact that some of the results so far earlier are definitely not showing, there is definitely a huge concern right now. And, if in these next couple of years, if resort is not going to continue to show, and I know I will say that it's still kind of early to just kind of overreact and said that we have to restart again because we're still in probably the very early stage of this rebuild, but we're almost getting to the point where you have to see some improvement. And so far from what I've seen with this team, I don't see any improvement whatsoever. And in many ways, I think you could kind of say that we have gone backwards in terms of the way this team is. And by saying that is a huge concern heading into the future. And I can't believe how we as a country, we're one of the biggest country in the world. We are one of the most populated country in the world, and yet somehow we cannot find talented soccer player on our country. And just the academy that we set up, something is clearly wrong with that. And right now, U.S. Soccer Federation, I've said it so many times, something is clearly wrong with this federation. And despite the new management that we have just kind of undertook in these last couple of months, it feels like it's the same old U.S. Soccer Federation, and it's not just the federation that is just completely rip off fans with the way them overcharging tickets to go to international matches, but just the product that they proven. They promise that the future is going to be even brighter with all these young talent. It looks like now it's just a complete lie and complete kind of false hope. And I am very concerned right now as a U.S. men's national team, as a U.S. men's national team fan. And I, of course, just changed to my regular jacket and took off the England jacket because it's kind of a little bit weird wearing the England jacket while doing the moving forward series for an MLS team. But for DC United, what a year it's been for them. And it's unfortunate that their Cinderella year that they had, and this roller coaster kind of year that they had, end up of them getting eliminated in the knockout round. But overall for DC United, they finished the regular season record with 14 wins, 9 draws, and 11 losses. And they have 51 points total in this season, which is good for 4th in the Eastern Conference. And it's incredible the fact that they somehow were able to find their way to finish 4th place in the Eastern Conference, considering for the majority of the first half of the season, they were near the bottom of the Eastern Conference. And that incredible run that they had in the second half of the season is the reason why they were able to climb all the way up to fourth place in the standing and even get a home game for the knockout round. They've scored 60 goals this season. That is twice as much as they did last season. Remember, last season they scored 31 goals, and it was one of the lowest, or actually tied with the lowest amount of goals scored of any MLS team. 1 year later, they have doubled that. I mean, what a year. What a different a year makes in terms of the offense and in terms of the amount of goals scored that DC United had this season. And of course, a lot of that you could argue is because of the arrival of Wayne Rooney and how that pretty much has changed the way this team is, and the team has been probably one of the most entertaining team to watch, and probably reminds you of the old DC United team where they were winning titles left and right and left and right. The goals allowed they conceded this year was 50 goals that they conceded, or actually, no, that doesn't sound right. The goal allowed that they have this season is 50 goals, but most of those came in the first half of the season. They were by far one of the best defensive team in the second half of the season, and their goal differential was plus 10. And like I said, they got eliminated in the knockout stage. They got eliminated by the Columbus Crew at home. Top goal scored for DC United, unsurprisingly, Wayne Rooney with 12 goals. And just quickly go back to the England versus USA game. Rooney did play in that game. It was his farewell game, and I was kind of surprised he did not start in that game, because I remember when Landon Donovan played his very last game for the US men's national team, he did start in this game, and eventually he got subbed off in the second half with a standing ovation. But instead, it looks like England decided to do something kind of opposite. Instead of putting Wayne Rooney in the starting 11 and get a standing ovation from the Wembley crowd as he gets subbed off in the second half, they decided to put him in the second half and get a standing ovation when he came on and after the game. And unfortunately, he didn't score in the game. He did had a couple of opportunity to score a goal, but unfortunately, he did kind of came up empty in that game. But he has 12 goals this season for DC United, and keep in mind, he came doing July this season with DC United. 12 goals in a half season is just incredible. Imagine if he was here for the whole season, he would have been right up there near Zlatan's number of 24 goals so far this season, and he would have been one of the top goal scorers so far this season. And then Lucio Acosta, of course, followed him with 10 goals. And again, not very surprising that Acosta is right behind him, because the whole Lucharu and Wayne Rooney connection was just something incredible that we saw in the second half of the season. Darren Maddox with 10 goals. Darren Maddox is kind of a guy that has been kind of a forgotten guy in DC. And the fact that I feel like people really kind of didn't appreciate. I feel like people, as much as they have looked at Rooney and Acosta with what they've done with this team, a lot of people don't give enough praise of what Darren Maddox were doing. Like, especially in the first half of the season, he was really the only guy that can actually score for this team, and he was really the go-to guy in terms of goal scoring department, and he's been pretty consistent throughout the season. I mean, he at least get a goal or two every single month, and it isn't like after the second half of the season or after the first half of the season he just completely went cold. He was still there. He was still scoring goals, but he wasn't getting as much as attention as he did kind of in the first half of the season. And then Yamil Assad with 9 goals, and followed by Paul Arriola to round up on the top 5 of the goal scoring chart, and Paul Arriola, of course, scoring 7 goals this season. top assist leader, Lucio Acosta with 17 assists. And remember how I said about Deutsch Cal, how he got 18 assists? He actually technically got 17 assists in the regular season. And the extra assist that he got was actually from the playoff game. So technically, both Deutsch Cal and Acosta did not co-own the top assists of MLS at 18 assists. It was actually 17 assists. Both of them are still the co-owner of the top assists this season in MLS with 17 assists. And then follow that by Paul Arriola with 8 assists, Yamil Asad also with 8 assists, Wayne Rooney with 7 assists, including that incredible assist that he had against Orlando City. I mean, that moment, you could argue that probably was the best goal of the year. Obviously, we know that the best goal of the year was the Zlatan volley back in that El Tráfico in March, which it was pretty unsurprising that was the result, and it's not very unexpected that was voted for the goal of the year, because that is going to go down as one of the greatest moments this league has seen. But that moment where Wayne Rooney basically tackled Dom Dwyer right around midfield and then just launch a hopeful long ball up to Acosta to win the game for DC United, that will also go down as one of the greatest moments we have seen this season and one of the greatest moments we've seen in MLS history. And then Zoltan Stielberg with 7 assists to round up the top 5 assist leader. What went right for DC United? Obviously, as I mentioned before, they had an amazing second half run. And actually, let me turn the camera a little bit because you couldn't quite see the word at the end of this board. But as I said, they had an amazing second half of a run this season and really just capture a lot of fan base and just a lot of praise from a lot of fan base, and everybody was really impressive of what DC kind of put. And when I saw what DC has been doing every single year, I kind of almost fell in love with this team, with what they did in the second half of the season. And why wouldn't they? Or why wouldn't you? Everybody should see this team as just almost like their second team of what happened in the second half of the season. And then the other thing that went right, Wayne Rooney, of course, that signing is going to be one of the best signing, going to go down as one of the best signing this season, because he has completely changed the culture. And just with a lot of people kind of criticize the fact that DC kind of overpaid him with the amount that they paid when they got him back in June. And I was kind of like one of those person. I thought it was a little bit too much that they paid for him. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's that much anymore after what he has done to this team in the second half of the season, and just completely changed the culture and re-energized the team and completely made a lot of his teammates much better than what you would think it is. I mean, Lucio Acosta, first half of the season, he was absolutely awful. Second half of the season, when Rooney came in, he looked like one of the best players in MLS this season. That is how much he has impacted to this team and also the teammates around him. And lastly, what went right for DC United is that Audi Field is an absolute fortress. I mean, 12 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw at Audi Field. That is just incredible. That is like Atlanta United and Red Bulls kind of number in terms of the whole record that they have. And yeah, Audi Field was just a place where it doesn't matter who the team is coming into Audi Field, they always have a lot of problems to potentially win a game. I mean, some of the opponents that they beat even include Atlanta United, when Atlanta went to Audi Field and lost to DC 3-1 in that game. That is how much of a fortress Audi Field is, with them beating even the big team in this league. What needs to improve for DC United? So as much as Audi Field is a fortress, the one big problem that I think a lot of people kind of forgot about DC throughout the season is that the road form is absolutely dreadful. I mean, they have one win this season on the road, and the only win that they had all season long was actually a game that I attended. It was between the Quakes versus DC United. DC, of course, won 3-1 in that game, and whenever you play the Quakes, and if your team name is not DC, or not DC, but if your team name is not FC Dallas or Minnesota, you're obviously going to get some point off of the Quakes, whether you play at home or you're playing on the road against them, because the Quakes were that awful this season. But other than that, they just couldn't get a win against anybody else on the road. And the other thing that they need to improve is the playoff struggle. And this is something I haven't mentioned a lot about DC United, but DC have really struggled in the playoffs in these last couple of years. I mean, in the early days, DC was very good in the playoffs, and they usually, a team, whenever they get into the playoffs, is the last team you want to face in the playoffs. And that kind of same kind of saying was kind of come true in this year's playoffs with how hot they were in the second half of the season. But unfortunately, their struggle in the playoff, especially after they won 4 titles in MLS, and in those post kind of DC United dominance that they had in the early 2000s and in the late 1990s, they have really struggled in the playoffs. They have not won a lot of playoff series. They tend to lose a lot of playoff series, and this year it's no exception to that. I mean, losing to the Columbus Crew in penalties and in that game, they were not very good. They were definitely not the DC United team you thought of in the whole second half of the season, where they were just absolutely dominating teams throughout the entire second half of the season. And then the other thing that they need to improve is, they might need to improve their defense a little bit. This is mostly what happened in the beginning of the season, where most of the goals, like I said, they conceded this season came early part in the season, and as we head into the second half of the season, their defense was pretty rock solid. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Bill Hamid is back with this team, and he really bailed out that back line a lot of time. And, if it wasn't for him with this team, you could have argued that maybe DC would have conceded more than 50 goals that they have this season. But certainly their defense is sort of one of the biggest weakness with this team. So now transitioning into the moving forward, and I think that's where I'm going to get to the last point first, is that they need some reinforcement on the defensive end. I think this team definitely have a lot of talent going forward and also in the midfield, but the defense is sort of a little bit of an issue, and that is when you get to kind of almost no-name kind of player in that defense. So maybe they need some reinforcement in that part, and also maybe they will have to think about re-signing Bill Hamid, because remember, Bill Hamid, when he came back to DC United, it's not a signing that he made. He did not re-sign for DC United when he came back in July. He was actually signed on a loan with the Danish team that he signed after he left DC United. And I think if DC United wants to keep Bill Hamid, they have to re-sign him, and I expect maybe they will eventually use that money to re-sign Bill Hamid for next season, because he was just incredible in the second half of the season. He looked like the Bill Hamid of the old, from the first stint of him with DC United, of just him just stopping every single shot and making some really crucial save throughout the game. So I think that is one player that they definitely need to lock up in the off season, and hope that they can have him again in the beginning of next season. And the other thing moving forward for them is that they of course need to fix their road form. So last season we saw that teams with good home record but bad road record, teams like Houston and the Quakes, made it to the playoffs with a good home record but bad road record. The very next season, guess what happened to both of those teams? The Quakes had one of the worst year, not just in their franchise history, but in the league history with just 4 wins. And Houston also missed the playoffs this season and finished 10th in the standings. So for DC, if they want to avoid that same fate, they got to improve their road form. Like even in the second half of the season, as I mentioned of how red hot they were, they still could not win on the road in the second half of the season. Every time they left Audi Field and not play a game at their brand new stadium, they didn't really get 3 points at all. And even when they play against weak team on the road, like the Chicago Fire in the last week of the season, they still could not get all 3 points against them. So they have to fix their road form. As much as Audi Field is such a fortress, you know, they need to kind of put a little bit pressure off their home form, because like I said, we've seen that in the past when team does well at home but do not do well on the road. This does not follow heading into the next season. So yeah, they need to improve their road form heading into next season. And then finally, moving forward for DC, can Wayne Rooney do it again next season? Can Wayne Rooney and Lucho Acosta kind of connection can continue their dominance heading into the next season? And will Wayne Rooney has the same kind of impact that he had with this team in the second half of the season heading into the next season? Because, you know, Rooney, he is going to get a year older next season. So, you know, as he gets older and older, his career is going to slow down and he is going to almost end up looking what David Villa is with NYCFC. Although I think David Villa, he kind of continued to look very dominant in MLS despite the fact that he got older and older each year. But you don't know if Wayne Rooney is going to be like David Villa. You don't know if he's going to continue to perform very well for this team and make a huge impact to this team. And if he can, then I think this DC United team could be heading back to the playoffs next season. But yeah, that is pretty much it for my moving forward series for DC United. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this? If you're a DC United fan, let me know in the comments below, what do you think are something that went right, what needs to improve, and most importantly, moving forward. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I, of course, will see you guys next time.